Newcastle racing to sign phenomenal star who outscored Isak last season. On the hunt to end their search for a striker at long last, Newcastle United are now reportedly battling to sign an impressive target who outscored Alexander Isak last season. Newcastle's striker search goes on. It's been a disappointing summer for Newcastle, but it's especially been a woeful last 7 days. Having missed out on Hugo Ekitike, it seemed as though the saving grace in that saga would be that Liverpool settled for the Frenchman rather than Isak on top. But the Swede has since dropped a bombshell on the Magpies. Reports swiftly emerged earlier this week that the forward's thigh injury was simply a smokescreen for his desire to leave St. James Park this summer to spark what could be an almighty battle between the player and club as the transfer window progresses. Having his say on the matter, Eddie Howe told reporters, "Of course there are things going on behind the scenes. He will be aware, he's in the news every day, and I'm sure that's not easy for anyone in that situation. Conversations that happen between Alex and the club, or Alex and myself, will stay private for obvious reasons. We do share a really good relationship with him. He's been magnificent for us since he's joined. He's very popular in the dressing room. We'd love him to continue his journey at Newcastle." Isak's desire to leave Newcastle isn't even the latest of a long line of disappointing news this summer, however, with their pursuit to sign Yoane Wissa taking a major twist. Now, with the Isak sage continuing and Wissa off the table for now, Newcastle have reportedly set their sights on a familiar face. Newcastle battling for Mitrovic's return. According to Caught Offside, Newcastle United are now battling to sign Alexander Mitrovic from Al Hilal this summer, with those at the club warming to the idea of bringing him back. The experienced goalscorer, who still loves the Magpies despite his time at the club not ending in the way he would have dreamed, could put his St. James's Park failure behind him once and for all with a return this summer. 7 years on from leaving Newcastle, Mitrovic is far more well-rounded and even outscored Isak's 27-goal haul last season, with 28 of his own in all competitions, and loves St. James Park, once calling it his favorite away ground while at Fulham. It was during his time at Fulham that the Serbian earned the most praise, with manager Marco Silva going as far as to describe him as phenomenal in 2022. Now, at 30 years old, Mitrovic could return with a bang to St. James Park to hand Howe an unexpected solution to his growing striker problems. When will Viktor Gyökeres make his Arsenal debut? Mikel Arteta offers update on £65 million signing. Mikel Arteta has suggested Arsenal fans might have to wait for their first sight of Viktor Gyökeres in the club's shirt. Arsenal play rival Spurs on Thursday. Gyökeres did not report for Sporting preseason. Arteta: "We will assess him. What happened?" Gunners fans would have hoped for their new £64 million, $86 million, man to feature in the first North London derby to take place outside of the UK. Gyökeres is in Asia with his new teammates. He was unveiled before the Gunners' 3-2 win over Newcastle in Hong Kong, but Arteta has suggested the Arsenal medical staff need to assess his fitness before he confirms his availability. The bigger picture. Gyökeres held out of Sporting CP's preseason to help push through the protracted transfer. His new manager said that while his medical was passed without a hitch, they need to get him up to speed with the right levels of fitness. Arteta did not completely rule out the 27-year-old from appearing on Thursday. What Arteta said: when asked if Gyökeres would participate in tomorrow's training session and the North London derby on Thursday, Arteta said, "Well, I think he hasn't had a single training session with the team since the last game was Sporting when they became champions. So we will assess him tomorrow. He's done all the medicals. Everything is looking good, but to get him up to speed with the right levels of fitness, I think is very important. So we're not going to stop him. We want him with us as quick as possible, but we'll have to assess, and the medical team will do that." What next for Gyökeres? Gyökeres will be chomping at the bit to get on the training pitch alongside his new teammates. The Swede, who will adopt Thierry Henry's No.14 shirt, needs to prove his fitness ahead of the Gunners' first Premier League game of the season against Manchester United on August 16th. Newcastle prepare big contract proposal as Alexander Isak to Liverpool takes twist. Alexander Isak wants to leave Newcastle for Liverpool. Newcastle are reportedly preparing a huge contract proposal as they consider their options in the wake of Alexander Isak's explosive transfer demand. The Swede has set out of the Magpies' preseason tour to Asia after asking to leave the club, having asked for his wages to be bolstered to £300,000 a week. Liverpool were put on red alert following the revelation, having already spent nearly £300 million this summer and bringing in fellow striker Hugo Ekitike. A formal bid is expected to be launched from Anfield, which would smash the British transfer record. Newcastle want to keep Isak at St. James's Park, but are seemingly not willing to break their existing wage structure to appease the talisman. He would earn twice as much as top stars such as Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes as a result. In turn, Newcastle have been forced to look at succession options for Isak. Their sights appear to be set on RB Leipzig wonderkid Benjamin Sesko, who has previously been linked with Manchester United and Arsenal. Transfer expert Fabrizio Romano claims that Newcastle are working on a significant contract proposal to Sesko, with the club ready to go big next week. These 7 days are considered crucial for the Slovenian's future. For the latest breaking stories and headlines, sign up to our Daily Express transfer newsletter. Newcastle are pushing for Benjamin Sesko. Newcastle are also ready to approach Leipzig over Sesko in the knowledge that a gentleman's agreement exists allowing the 22-year-old to leave this summer for potentially as much as a fixed fee of £69 million, with a further £8 million in add-ons. Sesko's arrival would go some way to soothe the pain of losing Isak, especially to a Premier League rival, with Liverpool's transfer kitty bolstered by the imminent sale of Luis Diaz to Bayern Munich for £65 million. They could also sell Darwin Núñez to Saudi Arabia to raise further funds. And Eddie Howe has called for Newcastle to make a decision shortly on their plans for Isak. The ownership, together with the board of directors, the decision will rest with the board, Howe said. There's a whole football club that has to make the decision. He also confirmed that there was no chance Isak would join up with the rest of the squad in South Korea. I've got no major update on that, Howe added on Isak, after an injury was first cited for his absence. He first mentioned his thigh just before the Celtic game. We assumed it would be a very minimal injury, nothing too serious. And then on the Monday after the Celtic game, he went in from training very early and didn't feel right. So he's now in Newcastle getting that injury assessed, and hopefully he'll be back soon and playing in the black and white shirt. That's what we all want to see. Liverpool's distance ahead of Man Utd never clearer as rivals take Alexander Isak's stance. The growing gap between Liverpool and Manchester United is highlighted once again, with both clubs showing vastly different stances towards striker Alexander Isak. Liverpool has no competition from Manchester United in the race for Alexander Isak. The widening gap between Liverpool and Manchester United has been thrown into sharp focus once again, this time over their contrasting approaches to Newcastle United striker Alexander Isak. Isak was left out of Newcastle's traveling squad for their pre-season Asia tour, which begins with a friendly against Arsenal this weekend, citing a thigh injury for his omission. However, reports from the Daily Mail suggest Newcastle is also aware of Isak's interests in exploring transfer options, one of which could be a move to Liverpool. Isak still has 3 years remaining on his contract with Newcastle, and the club is keen to retain him. Newcastle's chief executive, Darren Eales, confirmed last season that discussions about a contract extension would take place during the off-season. Despite this, Isak is currently hesitant to commit his future to the Magpies as he considers his next steps. Meanwhile, rumors are swirling. Liverpool is reportedly prepared to make him the most expensive signing in Premier League history. Liverpool previously indicated it would be willing to offer around $162 million for Isak. However, with Newcastle firmly refusing to sell, no formal bid was made, and the club instead secured Hugo Ekitike's signature. Whether Liverpool will view Isak's apparent desire to leave St. James's Park as a renewed opportunity remains uncertain. At Anfield, Isak is seen as a proven Premier League talent and a reliable option up front. Despite spending nearly $400 million this summer, the Reds have yet to offload Darwin Núñez and have rejected offers from Bayern Munich and Barcelona for Luis Diaz, resulting in a crowded attacking lineup. A move for Isak might become viable if circumstances around Núñez and Diaz shift. Alexander Isak is being linked with a move to Liverpool this summer. A new center forward was United's top priority this summer, yet over $175 million has been spent on two attackers who operate best playing off a central striker. Club executives continue to explore the market for a true number 9, with names like Ollie Watkins and Nicholas Jackson recently discussed, but Isak has not been among their primary targets. Despite being regarded as one of the best in his position globally, Newcastle's firm stance on keeping the Swedish striker led United to look elsewhere. Even now, the financial demands of signing Isak make a deal highly unlikely. More importantly, it's questionable whether he would leave a Champions League campaign with Newcastle to join a club that finished 15th in the Premier League last season. Even if United could persuade him, the deal would require significant financial maneuvering. While Alejandro Garnacho is one of their most valuable trade assets, Newcastle is already well stocked in wide attacking positions, limiting the viability of any potential swap. It just shows the gap between United and Liverpool couldn't be wider. Latest on Alexander Isak's future as Eddie Howe drops Liverpool transfer update. Alexander Isak could leave Newcastle this summer, with Liverpool the only club to have made an offer for the Swedish striker. As Eddie Howe spoke out on his future, Eddie Howe explained Alexander Isak's absence. Newcastle manager Eddie Howe has made it clear that there's no set deadline for a verdict on Alexander Isak's future, but he acknowledged that the Liverpool-linked forward might depart this summer. The Swedish frontman, who has shone brightly during his 3-year stint at St. James's Park, is keen to consider opportunities beyond the Magpies. This leaves Newcastle facing the prospect of losing its star player, even after lifting a trophy and securing a Champions League spot. Should Isak exit, it would likely demand a record-breaking fee from a British club, with Liverpool currently the sole Premier League side showing interest, alongside attention from Saudi Arabia. Isak's recent season saw him hit peak form in terms of goals, yet he remains absent from the team's preseason activities, primarily due to the ongoing rumors about his future. Howe has stated that the club won't rush into any decisions as they contemplate what will benefit them in the long term. He said, "I wouldn't put a timescale on it. I think with these situations, it has to be right for the football club, and everything then is taken into context below that. But the club will make the right decision with all the information that it has, and ultimately to try and move the club forward in whatever way that is. Then it's up to us to make good decisions the other way and try and improve the squad as best we can. That's what we're trying to do, regardless of Alex's situation." Howe faces the prospect of losing his best player. But I think there's a wider picture here. There's a whole football club that has to make the decision. The ownership, together with the board of directors, especially with the money involved in modern-day transfers. The manager, of course, has an opinion, but ultimately the decision will rest with the board, he added. Of course, there's things going on behind the scenes with Alex. He will be aware he's in the news every day, and I'm sure that's not easy for anyone in that situation. Conversations that happen between Alex and the club, or Alex and myself, will stay private for obvious reasons. We do share a really good relationship with him. He's been magnificent for us, and he's very popular in the dressing room. We'd love him to continue his journey at Newcastle. I certainly hope he stays, and I said last weekend, I was confident that he'd stay. I don't see anything that's going to change that opinion of mine at the moment, but it's football, and who knows what the future may bring. All I would say on the broader picture is whatever happens has to be right for Newcastle. We're in a very strong position financially. We're determined to be successful. We are ambitious. We've got a great season ahead of us. We need to add to the squad and continue to improve, and the journey can continue in an upward trajectory. Liverpool has recently splashed out to secure Hugo Ekitike from Frankfurt as its new number 9. But this might not deter the club from re-entering the market to consider a deal for Isak. The Reds have already shelled out more than $300 million this summer, but they still have the capacity to spend significantly more if required. This would be a massive setback for Newcastle, who has been open about its ambitions. Since their Saudi owners took over, the Magpies have managed to invest steadily and have kept hold of their star players up until now.